Hello and welcome to episode 39 of the Mystical Times blog podcast with me, Michelle Eve. On this episode, we'll look at some of the more ghoulish happenings in Gloucestershire. The word ghoul comes from ancient Arabic folklore, a desert demon said to lurk in graveyards that robbed fresh graves and devoured the dead. These were shape-shifting monsters that lured travellers to their doom. When the word crossed into English in the 18th century, ghoul kept its graveyard associations, and by the 19th century, ghoulish emerged as the perfect adjective that revels in the macabre, a fascination with death, disaster, or the grotesque. In this episode, we step into the shadows of two unsettling tales, both of which refuse to be left in the past. A cursed lead tablet found in a house but was written before the house was even built, and then to a named grave at a crossroads. It may be named, but no one knows just who or what is buried there. Tales of witchcraft and a curse, all here in this episode that I've called Ghoulish Gloucestershire. The Dimmock Curse. In 1892, a lead tablet that was inscribed with a curse was found in the cupboard of a large house in the village of Dimmock. The cursive was in 17th century script, and the title at the top of the lead tablet was Harass Silly. This name of who the curse was for was written backwards. The name, read forwards, was Sarah Ellis. The tablet had some complex designs on it to represent good and evil spirits of the moon, which also included the numbers that astrologically represent the moon, these numbers being 3, 6 and 9. In the actual worded curse, it adds the names of 8 demons, these being Hazamodate, Actius, Magalizeus, Orminus, Laius, Nikon, Minom, and Zephyr. The demons were added as whoever made this curse wanted a certain person to be banished away from this place and country, and at the end of the curse it said Amen to my desire, Amen. It is not really known who this particular Sarah Ellis was, but there was talk of one such local woman who was married to an Anthony Ellis, who locals said she had killed herself over a curse. Back then, burials of those who took their own lives were buried at crossroads, and she is said to have been buried at a local crossroads with a stake through her heart. There is a cross called Ellis Cross on the boundaries between the village of Dimmock and Oxenhall. Ellis Cross was referenced on ordnance maps until around 1923. Where the cursed tablet was found, it is believed it wasn't there originally, as the house was built at a later date, so no one knows who brought it there. The Thackwell family lived in the building in the 19th century, but it seems they are not connected with the cursed tablet. You can see the cursed tablet in the Folk of Gloucester, formerly known as the Gloucester Folk Museum. Betty's Grave. Near to the village of Poulton in Gloucestershire, by a crossroads, lies Betty's grave. No one seems to know who Betty was. The place is on maps and has a sign saying Betty's Grave. So just whose last resting place is it? Many tales are told about this grave, and all seem to indicate that it is a witch who is buried there at the crossroads. To see why it is said to be a grave of a witch, we'll take a trip back to the 1700s. The last woman to be burnt at the stake in Gloucester was Anne Williams, who was not convicted of witchcraft, but of petty treason. as she was found guilty of poisoning her husband in 1753. It had been around 1735 that the penalty of death for witchcraft had been abolished in England and Scotland. Despite the change in the law, women who were accused of being witches were usually ill-treated and feared throughout their lives, and when they died, their burials were not usually documented. A letter by Reverend Winterbotham from 1773 spoke about the attitudes of those villages and town dwellers in how they treated these women who were said to be witches. His letter was written about the town of Cheltenham, and he wrote this:
The intellect of the inhabitants was low, if I may at this time be allowed to form a judgment, from the tales of witchcraft which I well remember. The treatment of two poor women who resided in the town and had the misfortune of being suspected of that yet too widely imagined crime. These two women and their cat were certainly the terror of the neighborhood. These were sisters, and in charity, I presume maidens, though very aged, they subsisted by means of parochial aid and what they obtained by asking at the hands of their good neighbors, who were afraid to refuse them anything while living, but who avenged themselves by refusing Christian interment to their mortal remains. I believe indeed neither of them had even a coffin. At least I recollect seeing one of these innocent victims of folly with her clothes on, being dragged in a cart, followed by a noisy rabble and buried in a piece of boggy ground without the town with less ceremony than has often attended the burial of a dog.
One of the many stories about who is buried at Betty's grave says it was a gypsy woman who was murdered and buried in that grave. Others say it was a housekeeper who either poisoned her employer and then poisoned herself on that very spot. Another tale talks of a woman called Betty Bastow, who made a wager with a farmer that she could cut an acre of wheat in record time with a scythe, but after winning this bet, she dropped dead on what was to become Betty's grave. Another tale is that a young baby girl was found at that spot, and whoever found her named her Betty Bastard, and it's said she went on to become a witch, who was then burned to death, and it is her ashes that are in Betty's grave. Despite all the myths and legends surrounding Betty's grave, there is said to be a strangeness to the area. In the 1970s, market traders travelling up to a market in Fairford had to pass Betty's grave, and it was said that local witches placed symbolic items on the signpost above the grave, and that these traders were unable to pass until these items were removed, but by then it was too late to carry on, as the market at Fairford had closed. A factory that was built nearby Betty's grave in the 1980s suffered many electrical difficulties, and it was said that this was due to an energy around Betty's grave. The electrician went to the grave and left 2 potted plants to try and appease the bad luck that had been experienced. Unfortunately, this didn't work, as the electrician went on to have his ankle broken when he received a very nasty electric shock which had thrown him across the room. He later said that perhaps Betty hadn't appreciated the potted plants and that he should have placed some flowers on her grave instead. Flowers are still left at Betty's grave to this day, and if you ever pass this site, be sure to leave a flower or 2, just in case. That's all for this episode, and I do hope you enjoyed hearing about the cursed tablet and Betty's grave. For the next episode, episode 40, I dive into the eerie phenomenon of the black dogs, those huge red-eyed spectral hounds that have prowled Britain's lonely lanes, churchyards and crossroads for centuries. Till next time.